First of all, I think that the private kind of element of this example was the last part of it, not the Moishe Lach and Shlomo Lach. Obviously, it's some kind of formula, yeah, obviously. But afterwards, she mentioned list of pupils that she remember, and those names just, they just decided to erase. All of them murdered during the Holocaust. But yeah, I think that this is why I chose to call this paper The Public and the Private, as we can see that Kalisch's book was, the first thing that you can read in the book is that this book published on the days that Israel had this huge victory during the war, and then you read those academic kind of parts, and it seems like it's very public, and then you started to read all those memoirs, and it seems like documents, all those private people that write about the way they walk to their school, and the shoemaker and the butcher and his and that, and all those personal and very, those ordinary people kind of life. And but then you find this one and you realize that even though obviously she was Zionist or left-wing Zionist political activist, so she had her agenda when she worked at CISHO, and also when she wrote this chapter. So obviously it's all, you can say that in a way the public and the private is kind of mixed in this collective ego document.
Because just a follow-up, because CISHO, look, she's writing in Israel where Poalei Zion Small are no longer.
Yeah.
Bund, definitely, Anathema, Muktzeh, and territorialists, who knows who they are. So, I mean, she's writing from kind of the losing political camp, and maybe some of the censorship of the people who edited the Kalisch Yizkor book kind of went after her because she's kind of on the very left margin.
Yeah, but still, you should remember that she managed to make Aliyah during 1932, and she was a Poalei Zion activist, which is kind of weird, as we know. Poalei Zion left has very few certificates to Israel, so it's kind of, in a way, unfortunately I could not find relative of this woman, so I only know what I know from this archive file that I found. But yeah, obviously private and public mixed all together, and political as well.
All right, I see over here. Wait, you asked the question.
Yeah, you want to say something? Okay. And so thank you to all of your talks, and I wanted to ask Noam something. I really enjoyed your lecture, and I agree with everything, so it's not even so much of a question. I think that is also very helpful for the concluding discussion, because it is very clear methodologically. That was very helpful, and I think, like, to take away from that is really with the kind of set of questions we need to have in mind when we read these different documents. And then just something I found very, like, what struck me was that you mentioned in the letter from the woman from Vienna who bought the
Weisberger.
And then she wrote, it's just an information, but just what we can make of this is that she's also attaching the cooking book, right, of her mother, which was, because I work a lot with cooking books as an historical document. So that just is one, like, sentence, and it's not even part of the letter, it's not, but it's an information that, I mean, I could do a lot with that, the meaning of that the last thing is this letter in the cooking book of her mother, what she wants to be preserved. That's just a,
okay.
That was just a comment, I just found it very, very interesting.
The context of this letter is important, but I forgot to tell what was the end of the story. We got this letter in 1954 from someone from Haifa, Ramot Remez, Abraham something, and they were friends of her. She didn't live in Vienna, she lived in forgot the name, a small town in Vienna, in Austria. And she had Jewish friends who succeeded to escape to the States in the very beginning of the war. And she sent, this letter is addressed to them, but she cannot send the letter to the US, so she leaves this letter by the landlord, but the woman who was her landlord. And after the war, these friends come to visit Austria, and they come to the landlord, and she says, listen, I have a letter for you. Letter and a cooking book and a photo, all of them in one small package. And she decided to commit suicide when she got a note from a policeman one day after she's going to be arrested. So she took her Veronal, this cyanide, and she committed suicide. And she did not succeed in committing suicide. She suffered a lot, and she was taken to a Christian monastery hospital, taken care by nuns. And the nuns, even though they are committed to save every life, they saw how much she suffered and they helped her die. Yeah. And after the war, this couple from the United States came and got this photo, and they gave it to us because they wanted to commemorate her name. And I think she left a cooking book and not something else because this is something both practical and personal. Maybe she knew that.
You still have the cooking book in your archive?
No, we didn't. We did not get. We just got the photo and this letter.
All right, I see we have 2 more questions coming down this table. So you had a question, right? Did you have a question? Oh, excuse me. All right, yes, go on.
Thank you. It's this panel and the previous panel actually a question, because there appears to be 2 things which are actually not mentioned. One is, and I don't know if it even exists, letters or diaries of the Jewish policemen or collaborators. Is there a sort of an insight into them? Is there anything? And the second thing which appears to be, and this you might have to read between the lines, is that everybody who writes has or is lacking something in terms of the fact that their sovereign state has rejected them. Their motion to, I was once a German, I was once Polish, and this has been taken away from me. What do I feel towards it? Especially, I would say, more in terms of Poland or Lithuania, because they were the innocent bystanders. They weren't the great communists, the great fascists, or the great democracy. They were the overrun. So maybe reading the lines of the private and public, this panel, the previous one, is there any sort of feeling of this rejection of the motion, or maybe even of a political understanding of what this war is all about, which is a war of ideologies, and or to the future of where do I wish the victor to be, even if it is, the fact is the victor might be the state which has rejected me, like Germany, where would I have a role in that? Is there anything obvious, is there anything between the lines in terms of this, emotively even, on both in terms of the Jewish policeman collaborative, as well as reading between the lines of the political affinity? Is there anything evident in the archives, in the letters, in the diaries?
Yeah.
Anyone could answer, yeah.
Yeah. I would like to answer. Yes, this expression for that. We have, for example, a diary written by Stanislav Gombiński, who was a policeman in the Warsaw ghetto. And he writes about his emotions, and he's very, he tries to excuse himself, to justify himself, why he chose to do this and this. So he tries to present himself in a positive light. But otherwise we don't have a lot of material written by collaborators. But for the other questions, if we have expression of people, of Jews, that feel betrayed by their culture, by their colleagues, or
sovereign state,
yes,
citizenship.
Yes, so we have, and I have 2 interesting examples. One in a diary of this Sevek Okunovsky that I presented, a Jew from Warsaw. He says that he used to be a Zionist, used to be in Hashomer HaTzair youth movement, very active in Kalisz, by the way. And after what he suffered, he says, I came to the conclusion that there is no future for the Jewish people and the people. All people should unite, or not unite, but cancel their national identities, because if we continue, the new generations will suffer from being, I forgot the name, from being denounced. And he changed his ideology because of his suffer. Later on, when his brother in Israel held the diary and translated this diary into Hebrew, he omitted this sentence saying there is no future for a separate people. He says, and the brother wrote instead, we, the Jewish people, should always keep our separate identity. He just changed, the brother changed the text. Another example is by diary written by a 19-year-old girl, Sophie Glanzmann from Vienna. She grew up in Vienna, but she was expelled to Lvov because her parents were from Lvov, from Poland. And she writes exactly about how she feels. And she says, I don't know what to do after the liberation in half a year. I like writing. She writes beautifully, poems and very nice. She says, but this is the only language that I can, and I love this language and I hate this language, because this is the language that caused our suffer. And then she said, I don't know if I should study literature, German literature in Vienna or not. On the one hand, I am interested. On the other hand, this is the language and the culture of our enemies. And she says that Sevek Okonovsky suggests that people will stop being national, and she suggests that all Jews should be baptized, because you never know when people will start being anti-Semitic and chase the Jews.
Of course, you have a lot of documents of collaborators. Also in the Warsaw Ghetto.
Or Tzalel Perechodnik.
Yeah, Tzalel Perechodnik. This is exactly what I want to mention. Also in the Warsaw Ghetto, he was in Wartburg. Yeah. But you have also in the Warsaw Ghetto disinfection groups that all the ghetto hate them because of the way they act. And they say there is anonymous documents, but he says that the history will judge them. But he wrote very nice description about their poor life and why they need to do this decree and to. So I think there is Tzalel Perechodnik, of course, it's a famous one and very. Yes.
Medium intelligence who just
but there is a lot.
extradited his family to the Germans.
People feel guilty, and they also describe this guilty. And
yeah.
I have one question to Oli and one to Ophir. You mentioned some cases of recovering whatever they lost during the war. And you gave the case of Sami Tzarfati, when it should have been given to the wife, the woman, and the other one. Do you find any difference if the one that is due to get back everything is a woman, or is it the same? You're a Jew, so it's about the same.
I think it's the same, because you mean the wife who is claiming and the son who claims?
Yeah.
You think that there?
No,
you ask for the difference?
I'm asking if there is a difference.
I do not think that there is
because
a difference.
I know in some cases that I know in Poland there was.
Yes.
When the wife asked for it, it was much easier than when the son asked for it. So it could be something local. So I just wonder. That's basically it.
In this.
But okay. But the other question is to all three of you. You all deal with the late 40s, early 50s. And on whatever you do, you have both what we heard in the previous session, meaning oral history, and now we got written history. How do you combine it? Because this is the basis of every document. You do it verbally, you do it writing it, and there is some interplay. especially when we talk about testimonies that were taken after the event. I think that if we do some methodology, if we want to have some methodological insights, we must think about the sort of sources we have. And if you give an oral testimony, like the one you showed, you aim to impress. You want, especially if it's a video, much more than an audio one. But if you write, you use not only statement stuff, but also personal stuff. I think we'll have much more insights if we compare the kind of sources. I think we have to think about it when we try to portray, especially what you said before, when we want to portray emotions. I think that we have to look at the interplay, how it affects us as historians, as writers. We have to look, we must look at it. Luckily, I don't have to deal with it. I've got only reading. So does God, but everybody else seems to have some aura. And I think that there is a difference.
And I think that also, as Noam said, it's extremely important to understand to whom you write,
the audience,
and what is the purpose of what you write. Because I think that I'm the only one that talked about something that was written in order to be published, some kind of an ego document that was written in order to be published. In a way, I guess that it's some kind reflected on her way, but still her personal attitude was very present. So yeah, but I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to say that I think you're exactly right, but very, very few people have been able to do this sort of comparative work, and that's a really rich. No, it's a really rich possibility now that archival sources are becoming more readily available. Christian Delange did a examination of something similar of Srebnik. I mean, he picked Srebnik, who is well known, but looked at a written testimony taken by his school teacher immediately after the war and in Polish, and then several different testimonies to compare, what's the audience, what's the expectation, what is revealed and what is not. And that's a really fascinating, through his Shoah testimony with Landsman and then into the video archive and USC Shoah Foundation. It's fascinating.
Something that it's personal, but I think you could benefit from it. My father was a survivor. He was born in 1930, he came to Israel, he died when he was 7. And with him, he had a cousin who was 3 years elder, and he just died 3 weeks ago. And we knew that he was sick, but his grandchild, the eldest, interviewed him for hours. Just let him talk, and put it now on YouTube. So it's just let him talk. When he didn't know anything, he just tell me about it. That's basically the only guidance he got. And I believe that if you look at people today, because of the social networks and other stuff, I think that you are going to have another way of looking at all history, sources. And I think that when you do your testimony conferences, you should take it into account, and because I believe, I had it from personal knowledge, but I'm sure it's not the only one that does it. So, and we want to utilize it. I said in the beginning that sometimes we have many sources we don't know about because they are in private archives. But nowadays, even a private archive is a public one. So I think that you should take it into account when you do your kind of research, utilizing oral history. And there's something to think about.
All right, yes. Oh, wait a second. You have a question and you have another chance.
It was just a comment on this because I'm part of the oral history movement. And right now, a big debate is just to reuse all the collections that we have out of that, for example, your collection that was done in 1979, and especially when it comes to the Holocaust survivors, because there's so few of them among us right now, but also that we can compare how your interview is talking in the 1979 and my interview is in Sweden, where the collection was made between 1994 and 1998. It's also, the collections are from different years and different social settings, and they are done with different methodologies. Like you were talking, you have given the agency to the Holocaust survivors. The collection in Sweden, I didn't make it, I have written a lot about it. They don't have an agency at all. They are given all the questions to answer. They are not allowed to construct their own narrative. So I think it's also important to compare how those narratives have evolved over time, but also how we can reuse them in new research projects today.
So at the risk of coming in from a completely different discipline and not having been in the earlier sections of the conference, I'd just like to quickly say, to my ears, I hear something missing in the analysis here. You know, talk about the intended audience, etc. But in terms of literary theory, there'd be a question if these people are writing within a certain assumed literary tradition. What are their models? And then, you know, the famous theory in literary theory, Harold Bloom's idea of anxiety of influence, that people, you know, want to show they're doing something new. Here, from what Noam has said, I could imagine people perhaps having enough awareness of trying to break out of certain literary models that are associated with the oppressor, which is they have learned how to tell a story in a certain way, perhaps, and even maybe it affects the way that they want to consciously perhaps reject certain literary models that would stand behind the way they would present their own story. So just an idea of another facet that can be brought in, but I'm not supposed to be talking. Yes, please.
Actually, I wanted to respond to the oral history discussion going on here, if it's fine for right now, because this notion of we just let them talk is, I understand where that's coming from in the agency. I think that is an illusion. We never just let them talk. And that's also when you, for Stephen, the interviews you showed, the interviews did not just let them talk. And we heard the insertions. We heard that he was asking, for example, the interviewee said, the interviewer asked, so that was uneventful, which was maybe ironic because we knew the story. So obviously, and then he said apologetically, okay, so yeah, but we were illegal, this is not a secret. So we never just let them talk, and I also work with oral history, and I have a very hands-on approach to ask kind of questions, because we also know that, and I did not work with I work with German Jewish immigrants, but not Holocaust survivors. So, but there is this discussion about the worn-out narrative that tells us, actually also gives us a lot of information. For example, who they told the stories to. The woman who talked about Yefil Borit, you can understand who she told the story to. So there was again the discussion about the recipients. The stories has been told many times, so I tried actively to get these people away from the stories they told to all their Jägers friends for 70 years. And that is, I think that's a crucial issue how we deal with that, and I understand the criticism also of such an approach, I heard that many times, but I think we have, as historians, when we do an interview, even though we say, okay, we give them all the agency, we just let them tell their story, we never do that. In the case of the content, then it's also very different if it's a person you know before. We are part of the construction, even though that is not so, maybe not so, we have to do something with that. We also, if we read all the documents, all the contemporary documents, we are part of how we tell the story. And that's also, I found that very interesting, the way the Abraham's presentation was received about the fabricated documents, and then we hear the story about, now Angie left, I wanted to talk with her about that, about the story of this reconstruction of memory of Rachel, and to say something provocative, you could compare these two, right? It's reconstruction of telling your own story, but obviously it's the way we here in this room listen to the story is very different than you would tell the story in Pakistan or whatever. So we are part of it if we want to or not. I don't like this notion of, okay, we don't give an agency and we keep ourselves out of the process of our history because, yeah.
it's a well-taken criticism, but it's also, the point is that there's a methodological goal, and there's a realization that you're never entirely outside of it. And also, you're right, if you're delivering a testimony in your native language versus a language you've adopted to, if you're delivering a testimony to an audience like an Israeli versus an uninformed American or an uninformed interviewer from England who asks uninformed questions, then you're going to get a very different experience. And these are all, the things I showed are also all affiliate projects as well. And so part of the nature of this collection is that it was a collaborative effort. And so it started in New Haven, but it tried to reproduce itself in different affiliate projects around the world. And we expressed, the desire to have this methodological goal of creating an open room for the Survivor to Speak agency, et cetera, et cetera. But everyone adopted it and performed it in their own way, right? And some of the interviewers were more informed than others, and some were more active than others. So if you look at our Belgian affiliate, my God, it's like some of the interviewers themselves were survivors, and that is often the worst case scenario for this kind of methodology, because they think they know more than the survivor is talking to them. So it's a variety.
In the years, in the 50s, survivors were were seen as the best interviewers in the 50s. Yeah. There's all theoretical framework for this. Why survivors have to be interviewed.
I see every testimony as a lost opportunity, not, that's like it's something gained necessarily. I'm not saying that our methodology is necessarily better than, let's say, the USC Shoah Foundation's methodology. They're different and they reveal different things. But I would never assume that, we have no influence over the interviewer or the project has no influence over the nature of the content.
There's a methodological question. Anthropologists, for example, I'm not an anthropologist, disclaimer, but they have protocols. They have protocols of I'm a non-present observer, I'm a present observer. And Anthropology 101, they start that, what is the role of the person who asked the question. So when Yivo had an essay question, 1943, in the middle of the Holocaust, why did you come to America? How was your life in Eastern Europe? Why did you come to America? What have you achieved? Bingo.
I found a similar questionnaire in 1903.
Right, but that's before Yivo was...
By the Hirsch Foundation.
But by then they structure already the answer, what have you achieved?
All right, we're running into the coffee break. One of the presenters would like to respond, and perhaps one last question. No.
No. We are going to follow it because we're going to do something combined with the previous session. So
right. So after the coffee, but
and I have to bring some book here
to say something before the coffee.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just short respond. I want to respond to you, Dr. Sperber, about the comparison of oral testimonies. I agree, it's true, we should do it, compare it to textual testimonies, but I think the main thing is the time when the testimony was given, if it was right after the war or many years later. And even if we talk about oral testimonies, and I refer to what you, Viola, said, the context is very important. Some years ago, I interviewed Holocaust survivors from Germany, a man, and I took a video, I recorded everything, and he said how he came from Europe to Buenos Aires and to Israel and Shomer HaTzair and kibbutz and so on. And he says, I'm thankful to the kibbutz for getting me to build my new life in the kibbutz. I'm so happy. And I said, thank you very much, Rafi, Sar, thank you for taking the time. And he asked me, okay, did you turn the recorder? Turn it off? I said, yes. He says, I hate this kibbutz. So it also...
But it doesn't mean that you really hate.
But you turned it off. That's basically, that's it.
All right, let's have a round of applause for our presenters.